Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the close-in plenary session for SVCO 2015 this year. I hope you've enjoyed it. We have had some amazing number of spin-outs from the university, so incredibly interesting background. I'll leave Professor Tarassenko to speak a little bit more about that, but if you could just join me now in welcoming him. We're incredibly grateful for his time and a very appropriate final closing keynote speaker. So, Professor Tarassenko.
Thank you very much indeed, Claire. So I was given 20 minutes to almost any topic I wanted. I've decided to talk about disruptive innovation in medtech because that's what I do mostly, although I'm the head of engineering science department. That's the British English version. The US version is Dean of Engineering, which you've probably seen there somewhere. I've just put this, I don't want you to read all the bullet points, simply to say that I did start in Oxford a while back at Keble College up there in the north of the city, but I did spend quite a bit of time in industry, and I was in at the start of this revolution. So I actually did the technical study of how many calls we could put in a cell when Raycall bid for the cellular technology license, cellular telephony license in the UK in the early mid-1980s. And so if you get network busy, it's my fault. And actually, that's a very interesting thing, is that it's very hard to anticipate disruption, even at the start of the wave, because all the calculations I did had one basic assumption, which was that there'd be 100,000 users in this country of mobile telephony. That was our top line assumption. 50,000 for BT Cellnet, 50,000 for Raycall Vodafone. So I was in at the start, and there's absolutely no way we could anticipate. And it took a while for the growth to happen, and I think I'll talk about that as well towards the end of my 20-minute lecture. It took a while to happen. The first 10 years really were not about mobile phones. They were car phones. You needed the car to hold the weight of the battery that was needed for the technology. So it took quite a while from the mid-1980s to really about 2000 when it really started taking off. So that's an interesting lesson in terms of disruption. I've been director of the University Tech Transfer Company, ISIS Innovation, for the last 3 years, and I've founded 4 spin-out companies, most of which are in the medtech sector. So I thought I ought to speak about what I know best. One of the interesting things that Oxford forces you to do almost automatically is A, interdisciplinary research, and B, make it evidence-based. So I think my group has probably done more clinical trials, and this includes the highest evidence of highest level of evidence, which is the randomized control trial of mobile health technology. So in just about every kind of chronic condition you can think of, from asthma to diabetes, hypertension, cystic fibrosis, and cancer, we have done clinical trials of the technology, which is very important for adoption by the medical fraternity. And I'll just point to a couple of things that we're doing at the moment. We have a gestational diabetes app, which is used by just about every woman in the region. It's about 3.5 million people around the Oxford region in terms of the catchment area. 1 woman in 10 approximately gets gestational diabetes, gets a particular form of diabetes during pregnancy. And we've developed a smartphone app, which is what you see here on the screen here. There's a whole back end. I'm not going to go through that at all, but we've demonstrated in a clinical trial outside of Oxford, so independently done, is that 26% fewer clinical visits and a 50% reduction in administrative and clerical time by the diabetes midwives that manage these women. So there's a real clear business case for deploying this technology, certainly in the context of gestational diabetes. At the other end of the spectrum, with elderly people, we've developed not a smartphone, because that doesn't really work with my parents' generation, or at least not yet, but really this is an iPad or an Android tablet, the Samsung Galaxy Tab. It's a wireless-enabled tablet with large icons, so we threw away the keyboard because my parents' generation don't like to use keyboards, but they can use these big icons, just like an ATM. There are no wires. It's all Bluetooth in terms of the sensors. reliable physiological data, this is where I come in as electrical engineer. Clever algorithms to dismiss rogue data, and that's very important. Patients are given help to interpret the data. We have self-management built in, and I know you've had a session on machine learning, which is really my field of research. We build and model the patient from their data over the first 3 months. So we operate in open loop during the first 3 months, and then we switch on the closed loop with the alerting based on machine learning through all their data. And that has given us very high levels of adherence, which I believe are unique, not just in this country, but probably worldwide, greater than 90% in all studies, for people where the average age is 70, and overwhelming acceptance of technology, which we've written up in the British Journal of General Practice if you want to look it up. So that's quite traditional, but I thought for the last 20 minutes, last quarter of an hour now, I would talk about more disruptive technologies beyond what we're doing today, just to make sure that you go away thinking, and I'll be able to stay for a little while if you want to ask me some questions about what I'm going to talk about. Plus also the fact that I never give the same talk twice. So this is a brand new talk I've not given anywhere else apart from these slides. So when you go beyond what we've done so far with standard Bluetooth sensors and so on, what is the disruptive technology in this space? Well, I'm sure you'll see, most of you will know, it's wearables. So wearables is the disruptive technology in this space. We've worked with a couple of companies, one in the UK, this is 2MAS, this is the product from 2MAS Technology. And we also worked with a Silicon Valley company that some of you may know, Proteus Digital Health, very big. They've raised about $300 million for their business. They're in Redwood, so in Silicon Valley. So quite a few of you must know them. I was out there last year and I worked quite closely with them. It's a technology which is still evolving. It does give you continuous monitoring. There's the problem, and this is what we electrical engineers need to solve, of the limited battery life, and also you need to have the mobile phone nearby at all times. Now that sounds a trivial point, trivial for us, but my parents' generation, that's quite a significant point. So that's the disruptive technology, and we've done quite a bit of work in that space. But what I want to talk to you about to make it perhaps more exciting is disruption of the disruptive technology. So what my group is working on, and we're not the only ones, MIT have got 3 groups working on this. Philips in Holland and Xerox in the US are working on it, but we believe we have more clinical data to back this up than these other competitor places. And actually, MIT is partly, we collaborate with them, it's actually measuring all the things you measure with wearables and more, but with nothing attached to the patient, just a camera about a meter and a half. This is just a webcam focusing onto this patient's face in this case. Now, this is because we acquire clinical data. This is actually in the Oxford Renal Unit. This is a person on dialysis. You can see the tubes taking the blood in and remove the blood from the patient. So the blood filtering takes place here. And you can see there's a lot of instrumentation. That's because in order to prove the value of your technology, you have to do studies demonstrating it's at least accurate as the standard technology. So there's a blood pressure cuff here. There's a belt around the chest to measure the breathing rate, and there's a finger probe there to measure heart rate and oxygen level content. And basically what we have done, we have shown, I'll show you a couple of references in a minute, we have shown that we can measure accurately both heart rate, respiratory rate, or breathing rate, and the changes in oxygen levels with no electrodes attached at all to the patient. So that's the one technical slide. I was telling Peter that I would have one scientific slide. This is just if I was standing here with the ambient light shining on me, with a webcam 1.5 meters away, this is what I would see. If I took, now ROI means something completely different in this place normally. It's not return on investment. It's a region of interest in this case. So if I took a tiny little region of interest on my forehead, 10 by 10 pixels, then I would pick up the breathing rate of the patient. This is about 15 seconds, so it's about 3.5 oscillations multiplied by 4, because 15 times 4, 60 seconds. That means that a person's breathing about 14 breaths per minute, which is normal breathing rate. And then if you have a much larger region of interest, 100 by 100, so quite a bit of the forehead, then you pick up the micro blushes, the changes of color as the blood comes in and out with every heartbeat. And if you count these, there's about 15 of them, 14 of them, so the heart rate of this person is just under 60 beats per minute. So by just measuring with a webcam the reflection of ambient light, we can pick up components at the breathing rate frequency and the heart rate frequency. There's a lot more signal processing that goes on, but I've hidden all of that from you today. And here's the proof of the pudding. The same patient here. In black is the heart rate from the finger probe here. You can see the heart rate varying between 55 and about 70. And in red, the estimate from the camera. You can see it tracks it almost perfectly. In terms of the breathing rate, we now know we do better than the belt because the belt slips as the patient moves and so on. This patient has got obstructive sleep apnea, so when he's asleep, there's dips in the breathing rate, in black from the belt and in red from the camera. And in fact, the camera tracks the fact that there are continuous oscillations which are not picked up by the belt. So it's actually more accurate, the camera, than the belt is. And this is a world first. We published this last year in 2014. Because he does suffer from sleep apnea, at the same time as these slowing down the breathing rate, the oxygen levels go down from the normal values of 95, 96%. In blue is the reference from the finger probe. In magenta is the camera estimation of oxygen levels. And that's a world first published towards the back end of last year. And we don't just have to do it in this particular domain. We can do it in the NICU, the Neonatal Intensive Care Unit, with a special camera design through the top of the incubator here. And in here, you now have little baby Ben, 34-week-old baby. And we monitored Ben for 3 days. And during those 3 days, there was what is called a bradycardia. So the heart rate of a 34-week-old baby is about 170. In black, that's from the conventional probe, in this case attached to his foot. And there's a bradycardia, a drop in the heart rate that you can see there, and tracked by the camera in red. Now, these babies have got very underdeveloped lungs, so their breathing rate varies from about 20 to 80. In black, the standard way of measuring it using the electrocardiogram electrodes. In red, the camera, which again is tracking it more precisely than the standard method. And again, a world first. Here, the reference from the probe on the baby's foot, the dip in oxygen below 70%, which is a long way down when there was this dip in heart rate, and tracked by the camera in red here. And again, that's the world first result. So fantastic technology, 10 minutes on technology. What is the business case? Because we've set up a spin-out to exploit this disruptive technology. But what is the business case when you have a really disruptive technology which is completely new to the field? And that's the kind of thing that we need to think about. It's the kind of thing that we engineers need to do with you guys here at the business school. Think about what this disruptive technology, what the biggest impact could be in the short term and in the medium term in terms of, in this case, mostly medtech markets, but it might not be just medtech markets. So, I have a bit of help here, and I'm giving a free plug to a book that was launched in the US last week, and I'm sure it'll be part of the reading list at the SBS pretty soon. It's from the guys who run the McKinsey Global Research Institute. So the director is Richard Dobbs, and the two co-directors, the one in San Francisco is James Monica, and the one in Shanghai is Jonathan Wurtzel. I think it'll be launched in this country this week or next week. And it's the 4 global forces breaking all the trends. Now, the reason why I know about this is that I was sent a complimentary copy ahead of time because Richard Dobbs was one of my tutees when I was brand new in my very first year as an academic in Oxford. He was one of my students. He studied engineering, economics, and management. And James Monica did his doctorate in information engineering. So 2 out of the 3 authors are Oxford engineers, which we're very proud that they actually write these books about business trends, because perhaps engineers are the sort of people that can think about these things in collaboration with you guys. So they talk about these 4 disruptive forces, and I would say that in this case, 2 of them are applicable to the technology I've just been talking to you about. Obviously, accelerating impact of technology is one of the disruptive forces, but also demographics, the fact that we have this aging population, and this will only get more prevalent. The key issue, however, when you start talking to people about building a business around webcam sensing is privacy. Do you give the authorization for these images, even if the images are deleted within a second of the vital signs, heart rate, breathing rate, and oxygen levels being worked out, there's going to be an image at some point that exists on a system. So privacy is an issue which you have to think about. So we have 3 short-term applications with my latest spin-out called Oxy Health. One of them is baby monitors. Now, I don't know how many of you are young parents. When my kids were little, all we had was a kind of mattress and a kind of microphone, and if the baby started crying, one of us would run upstairs to check what was happening. Now, there are 800,000 babies born in the UK every year, so you can extrapolate by multiplying by 5, roughly, to get the US numbers. Out of the 800,000 baby monitors, 400,000 baby monitors are bought every year. And half of those now, 200,000, are iPhones. There's 2 products. So basically, you install a webcam somewhere near the cot. Here's one, here's another one. And then you have pictures of your baby asleep on your phone. And so what we're doing is adding the webcam monitoring of the vital signs to working in partnership with one of these companies to iPhone baby monitors. And interestingly, including predictive analytics, because from the vital signs, we can predict 5 or 10 minutes ahead when the baby's going to wake up. As a young parent, that may be quite useful. You can just finish the washing up or whatever you're doing just before the baby wakes up. I've got some data if anybody's interested. In fact, if you look at this particular web page, there is a demonstration video that backs up this evidence. So one area where we're building a business case is baby monitoring. Another area, for those of you in the US, this is the key mental health hospital for people who have committed pretty horrendous crimes. For example, the Yorkshire Ripper in this country, Broadmoor, and we're working with them. There's a piece on the BBC website in December 2014, because these people lose their right to privacy in many ways. So these are some of the secure rooms where they sleep, and every 15 minutes, somebody has either got to check the window or shine a light in their eyes. These are people with mental health issues. Waking them up every 15 minutes by shining a light into that is not going to do them a lot of good. So actually, they came to us and approached us about this technology. We've done a pilot which has been funded again to do a proper study. If we can actually show their heart rate and their breathing rate and their oxygen levels on a monitor, then they don't have to be disturbed. Much better for the people looking after them, much better for the mental health patients as well that are in those institutions. The third application, and seeing that I've got about 3 minutes left, I'll go through this fairly quickly, is actually trying to understand more why in cancer treatment, 2 of you guys may have the same genotype, same genomic variation. That's the reason why you have this cancer. You'll have exactly the same treatment, and then you'll do completely differently in terms of outcome. That's all to do with the phenotype, your physiology, and so on. For 6 months, it's very hard to get people to have wearables. So one of the ideas is to monitor non-intrusively in the home, using maybe a webcam on top of the TV, in the car, using a webcam in the rear-view mirror, and then fuse the phenotypic data with the genomic data to understand why it is that people are responding differently to the same cancer treatment when apparently, at least from the genomic point of view, they appear to be the same. So that's one of the applications we're working on with our colleagues in medical sciences. But finally, for my last couple of slides, I want to think about what may be really the main application. And something which is really growing in the US and in the UK is telemedicine. Now, telemedicine in this case is defined as remote consultations. So you don't have to go to your physician's office, to the GP office. You actually have a piece of software. It's just like Skyping, but it's HIPAA compliant. It means that your data is protected. And that's one of the top 4 investments in 2014, just under $300 million in the US, just the area of telemedicine, remote consultation with your physician. And so, for example, just picking one company at almost a random e-visit, provides easy-to-use 2-way video, which is HIPAA compliant, which means that your data is 100% safe and secure, and you connect with patients and have these remote consultations. It allows the healthcare professionals to evaluate, diagnose, and treat patients remotely. And this is an area which is going to grow because Skype is a phenomenon that most people are aware of. This is made HIPAA compliant, so the data is secure and safe, which it isn't, by the way, in Skype. So what we're working on is adding webcam sensing for the non-contact monitoring of the vital signs, because we believe that is the thing that will really transform telemedicine and help it really to take off. So the physician won't just be able to see you and talk to you. He or she will have a great deal of information about your physiology as they're monitoring you. And in addition, not just from that conversation with your physician, although Skype is not HIPAA compliant, you can save the webcam data, webcam sensing data from Skype conversations to build a database of personalized healthcare data analytics. So that's what we're doing at the moment because we believe this application will really grow exponentially. So I hope, and this is my final slide, that I've got you thinking on your way home about this technology, which is brand new, disruptive to the disruptive technology, that we are using at least two of the forces that I mentioned in this particular book, namely brand new technology, but also demographics. We have to do something about the aging population and the fact that we have more and more patients through the healthcare system every year. So the current trends in demographics underpin the business case. We have the technology to measure the vital signs through webcam with no sensors attached to an individual. We're addressing privacy and regulatory issues. And I hope this is a true statement, but I'm happy to come back for an SVCO conference in a couple of years' time. We really believe that telemedicine with webcam sensing is a technology and an application that will grow exponentially. Thank you very much.
So thank you, Lionel. That was fantastic. Thank you all. I only have two jobs today. One is to summarize everything you've done in the last 2 days, which is not an easy feat, and two is to say a bunch of thank yous. So on the first one, I'm going to need some help. So there were 38 concurrent sessions that ran over the course of the last few days, in addition to the plenaries. So part of an educational process is that you learn, and then after you, whether you read something or you go to a class, you reflect. So everybody just quietly think for a second. I'd like you to think about one thing that you're taking away from the last 2 days. And then I'm going to ask you for some help. So try to kind of summarize. There were some nice pictures summarizing the graphics of what happened and all the people who spoke. So I'd like you to think about one thing that you took away from the last couple of days. And I might just ask you to share them with us. If I can start with volunteers, but I'm also happy to cold call folks too. One thing, just one. We must have taken something away. Please. Yeah.
I think something that I would take away is from Phil Lewin's talk, which was about we're very good at focusing on what won't work in an idea. In fact, we should try to focus on what will work and try and make that happen.
Okay. Phil, kind of traditional, prototypical entrepreneur, trying to stay positive and optimistic about looking for the positives. Okay. Another thing. Yes?
Technology will shape the future, not finance.
Technology, not finance. So as a finance professor, okay, I get it. That's fine. I don't take it personally. That's a good thing. Other observations? Yes, in the back.
Guidelines for fundraising.
Sorry?
Guidelines for fundraising.
Could you maybe longer than those few words?
That was Brendan's section. The last one I thought was really good. Different ways of, and very practical hands-on application.
Okay. Good. Yes?
Michael Danucci spoke about tips for negotiation, which was really practical, and I thought that to be very helpful.
Okay, good. We'll follow that up with the negotiations class that hopefully some of the MBAs are taking. Other comments? Other observations? Yes?
I think Bob's idea that we are a quarter into this transformation of what it is to be human was very interesting, and after that I thought that curve is probably exponential too. So it's a quarter of an exponential curve.
So a quarter of the way doesn't mean, quarter of the time doesn't mean a quarter of the distance.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay, good. Other observations? Yes?
In Rich Stromback's talk, I was interested to hear him say that he will not consider investing in any project where the entrepreneur has not failed in the past. That that was not a black mark or a stain, but rather he looked at that as a learning, and if an entrepreneur did not have a failure on his record, he will not consider investing.
Okay. Which is the cultural thing that in some places in Europe we're still struggling with, which is the stigma of failure. It's fine to fail. at least once in a while. One more. Just one more. Thank you.
In Nick Bostrom's talk about AI and the challenges, the idea of not trying to regulate it, it's premature to regulate AI, but the importance of creating a set of AI safety experts that work with the AI developers and thinking about the macro implications.
Okay. So for those of you who didn't chime in, I want you to think, especially the students, to think about what you've learned in the last couple of days, what you've heard. You may strongly agree with some of it. You may strongly disagree with it. You may find it confusing. You may find it inconsistent. And it's your job to then say, what am I going to do with that? How am I going to think about that, reflect on it? Because this set of 2 days wasn't here just to keep you entertained, but to challenge you. And it's in that sense that I want to particularly thank Lionel for his last talk. This is, in some sense, what the university education in a business school is all about. So we could have had a business leader up here talking about it, but Lionel is a preeminent engineer and scientist who's giving you a sense of where those frontiers are. And as students at Oxford, we want you to kind of collaborate with folks across the university. And so it's important that you hear about medtech. And you may have seen in the background of his No Disruption, or what was the title again? No Ordinary Disruption. Those 4 megatrends, and those mapped not precisely, but if you think about what we're doing in GoTo, privacy is one of those issues. Last year we did demography and aging, so we're trying to make sure that you're thinking about those issues as well. So in any event, the summary, in some sense, is that there are a lot of things that happened in the last few days, and it's up to you now to try to weave them together and figure out how they relate to what you're doing in your classes, what you're not doing in your classes, your job search, how you make sense of what's going on in the world, career options, and everything else. So hopefully you got a lot out of this. You got a lot out of it because a lot of people put a lot of work into it. So I'd like to make a number of thank yous now before we all close. First, I want to thank the students and the other guests. Yesterday, as you know, I was surprised at 9 o'clock on a Sunday morning, this room was full. So thank you to all the people who came yesterday and who aren't here today, and to the MBAs and MBAs who stayed on for the rest of this experience. So thank you very much. Clearly, a big thanks is due to the speakers. And some of the speakers are here. So for those of you who are speakers, could you just stick your hands up for a second? And could everybody else give them a round of applause? So they come from all over the world to spend a few days with us, and it's really special. And it's especially special to get them as a group together because you can see certain kind of dynamics that happen when they interact not only with you but with one another, and that makes this event particularly special. But there's some folks that don't get as much applause, and I'd like to acknowledge them as well. In the background, there's been a team that's put this together, Maria, Claire, and Natalie, and the events team. So Claire, could you stand up? And so just to put this in context, in the last few weeks we've had events where we had 500 people, 600 people on the back of that. Silicon Valley comes to Oxford. The teams here have been working incredibly hard. So we can't thank them enough for all their hard work. So with that, I'd like to bring this year's Silicon Valley Comes to Oxford to a close. This is the 13th of the Silicon Valley Comes to Oxford's, and hopefully everybody agrees with me that it's been a fabulous experience. So thank you all, and I hope you have a great day. The only thing we tried to do that we couldn't do is that we moved this from November to May in order to improve the weather, and it didn't work. Halfway there. Okay, anyway, thank you all, and good night.